Hello, good afternoon once again, and welcome to the Sound Basics with me, your host, Emsarp. And today, we happen to come a bit delayed, but forgive us, it's all part of the technical problems that we've been encountering, All right, so this afternoon, we are going to dwell much on what we did last week. Upon consultation and other calls and references, we are told to come up with more explanation to what we did last week. Concerning the equalization. So this week we are working on equalization part 3. Equalization part 3. So with the equalization this time, what we're going to do is that we are going to look at the methods that we use, we employ in equalizing our various instruments, all right? The methods that we'll be using. And then we'll look at how to fix certain problems that really comes into play, all right? So, without wasting much time, let's go on a very quick commercial break. Right after that, we kickstart our action, all right? Okay. Hello. Yeah. Welcome back to this afternoon session. Yeah. Back to the sound basics. Emsarp. And today, let me give a big shout out to those who are watching us. Senior Uti, then Sap. Alright. Obi Adams to join. And GHI, I see you. And Akwesi Nana. Alright, I see you. I see you all. Alright, so let's move on straight to action. What equalization does and why it's so important. Last week, my papa request, people called me that why don't I go back to some of the necessities of equalization. So let's quickly zoom into action. What equalization does and why it's so important. Before we get started, let me just say that I want you to understand one important thing. EQ is present in every part of the mixing process, and you will use it every step of the way. EQing is part of the mixing process, and you will use it every step of the way. However you go through, you will mix, you will use the EQ. Right? You will need it there. So with the EQing, let's just not play with it. Even when you are balancing your sound at the final stage, whether in the studio or in the live, you still need EQ. So when we record, we use our ears to the frequency response of the microphone and its placement as the EQ. So you see, as we really start to work from the recording process, from the live process, whether we want them to sound like a huge wall of sound or clearly defined instruments, we use EQ. Okay? Alright. And then again, when we add reverb to create space, we use EQ to keep the reverb from clattering up to the low end. What I mean by this is that I'm recording or I'm mixing a sound, whether live or studio or live in a hall or whatever. What the second point states is that if we are mixing an instrument together, it is only the EQ that can help other instruments or every individual instrument to stand up. It's only that. Okay? Because if the bass guitar is competing for space with the kick drum, there is the need to separate the two, and it is the EQ that you can use to separate the bass guitar from the kick drum, so that the kick drum can stand out, the bass guitar can also stand out. When we add a reverb to a particular voice, it is the EQ that we use to ring out certain frequencies that will make it too clattering. Alright? So that is the way. And then let's continue. So the notes are all on the screen. Let's move on. The next point says that when we use delays to create depth, we will need EQ to tonally shape the delay to separate it from the true signal. If you use a delay and you are not able to EQ it well, you are not able to equalize it well, so that the delay effect will stand out from the original sound or the source sound, and it becomes flat, then it means when you use delay in crank, the delay must sound as delay, and it has its own effect. Alright? And then when we use saturation to create warmth or that kind of warmness in a sound, it is the EQ that tames the high-end harshness. If you use those tape machines or tape saturations, those who are in the studio like OT and the likes, Clue and Dems, they understand what I mean by saturation. When you use saturation, it gives the sound certain harshness, all right? So it is this EQ thing that you can use to bring out the harshness so that the sound can have a tonal balance. When we want to increase the loudness of our mixes by cutting unnecessary energy that eats up the headroom of our mixes, we use EQ. All right? The last time I spoke about balancing, creating space and all that. And this is the further interpretation of what I spoke about when I started with equalization of frequencies. So today, you know that we still have a lot to do. All right? We still have a lot to do. Let me take this part again, this point again. When we want to increase the loudness of our mixes, when your mix is so loud, or when your mix is there and you want to increase it, you need to cut very certain unnecessary energy that eats up the headroom. When you talk about headroom, the level that you have in order to open up the more of your sound, the level that you have so much that even when you increase the gains, your sound will not clip and you still have a very warm sound and a worthy sound to work with. All right. So when we want to increase the loudness of our mixes by cutting all the energy, other unnecessary energy, all those clattering stuff which eats up our headroom, we need EQ, because it is the EQ that will help you to create space for a certain number of instruments within a certain range of frequencies. All right. The next thing is that those of us who are in the studio, or whether even live, when we master our songs together as a cohesive album instead of a collection of unbalanced songs, guess what? We also use the EQ. Assuming I've mixed all the various individual channels and I'm putting all of them, like today we will be having a live play or a live session. All right. So as we play, you will hear that every instrument must stand out. Whilst those instruments are standing out, when they are coming out as a bundle of sound to you, they should come out in such a way that each and every instrument, or if we are to play 3 different songs today or 3 different songs in the studio, all the 3 songs shouldn't sound the same because they may not be the same genre. It is the EQ that will help you to balance this. All right? So think of the EQ like your lightsaber on your journey, or heroic mixing engineer. You might pick up more tips, tricks, and powers of force along the way, but your lightsaber will always be there, trusty by your side. Trusty by your side. So as for the EQ, on every part of the journey, as I indicated earlier, you will need the EQ. You will need the EQ in every part, whether you are adding, don't just say, I'm just adding effect. if you add an effect and you are not able to EQ it well, your effect will become baseless and meaningless. If you add EQ, if you add EQ and there is this, what do you call it? So much noise within that particular range, especially that is competing with what we have. In that case, your EQ will become meaningless, or your sound or your source of sound will become very frail. All right. So as a sound engineer, whether mixing engineer, monitor engineer, or mastering engineer, whichever way you want to become, I mean, as we are all learning, please make sure that we have a number of EQ tips that you have to go through. Now, let me take these 3 methods of EQing. There are 3 methods of EQing that you have to know. Although EQ might look pretty intimidating based on what I have said before, but it's actually fairly simple to use. There are really 3 things you can do with your EQ, and you need to do that. When you're able to do that, trust me, you have a very fine sound and a very fair way to go. All right. Now, these 3 methods of EQing include 1, filtering. We say filtering. Then the second point we say cutting. And the third point we say boosting. So the first method that people usually use, I use that a lot, is filtering. And you know what filtering is about. So on your screen now is showing what we do with the filtering. When you filter frequencies, you eliminate them completely from the source signal. The most common ones are called high-pass filters and low-pass filters. These are the 2, and the high-pass filter is the low cut, and the low-pass filter is the high cut. I think I've even mentioned this before in our previous lessons. I think in the episode 3, you can go and check more about that, the high-pass filters and the low-pass filters. When you talk about high-pass filters, it's also same as low cut. When you talk about low-pass filter, we are talking about high cut. Someone may ask, I don't know where the high pass name of my friend low cut. Now where the high pass, low pass, now where your friend high cut. No, don't confuse yourself. When we say high pass, it means the high should rather pass through the gate or the signal. The high should rather pass through the signal. Whilst if it's low pass, it means the low frequencies are good to go through so that the other low, the high ends will be eliminated. Okay? I hope it makes sense. You can add up your comments and your questions and suggestions in there, and we'll be glad to share with the viewers out there. All right, so the most common filters that we have are the high pass and the low pass. All right. All right, so let's move on to know what they are. High pass filters are frequently used to eliminate unnecessary low end from a mix, and low pass filters are common to tame high end hiss. Let me explain again. I said high pass filters are frequently used to eliminate unnecessary low end. Okay, unnecessary low end frequencies from a mix. And the low pass is there to also eliminate or filter frequencies that are common in the high end hiss. What I mean is that when you take a high-pass filter, or a high-pass filter will let all the frequencies above a certain cutoff point pass through, unscratched by the filter. Okay? So, for instance, on my mixer, if I'm to do a high pass, in other sense, I may say low cut. All right? What it means is that I said it will let all the frequencies above that certain cutoff point or certain threshold go through. For instance, if I purge my high cut or my high pass, my low cut or my high pass, if I set it around 153 hertz, what it means is that every low end that is coming through, starting from 20 hertz up to 153 hertz, will be cut off. And anything that is going above 153 hertz will be allowed to go through. I take it again. High pass filter. It will allow anything that is below a certain range of, or that is above a certain range of frequencies, that is above that, to go through. But anything that is below that end will not allow it. So, for instance, if I cut my lows up to 150 hertz, if I cut my lows up to 150 hertz, that up to 150 hertz or 100 hertz, anything short of that will not allow it. The equalizer or the EQ will not allow anything short of that to go through it. All right? But anything above the 150 hertz will be allowed to go through. So on your screen, you see that there is a high pass of about 100 hertz. All right? A high pass of about 100 hertz. And this high pass of about 100 hertz is there. Anything that goes between 20 hertz and 100 hertz will not be allowed. It will not be allowed. But anything that comes above it, so it means every frequency that is around the low end of 20 hertz to 100 hertz is not allowed to prevail. I hope it's clear now. Is it clear? I know some of my colleagues and my students are taking down the notes. So that is high pass. In other words, low cut. So if I cut a low of about 150 hertz, note that anything that is below 150 hertz will not prevail. It will not, that sound or that frequency will not come out, or it will not come up. All right. Now, conversely, a low pass filter will also leave the frequencies below a cutoff point alone. A low pass filter will leave the frequencies below a cutoff point alone. Okay? So, in other way around, that is just the vice versa of the high pass. So now with the low pass, anything that is within that range of the high end frequency will not be allowed. All right. Now let's move on. Notch filters are used when we need or when you need to completely eliminate a frequency band inside the frequency spectrum. Notch filters are used when you need to completely eliminate a frequency band inside the frequency spectrum. So when you talk about when you talk about the notch filters, we are looking at, for instance, a complete knob which will just cut it off. So, like for instance, in my voice right now, you can determine that I have cut. It's so specific. I've cut up to 240 hertz. 240 hertz. So with this 240 hertz, you realize that there is loss of depth in my voice. All right? And now I've cut just up to 150. So at least I've entertained a bit of. So with the notch filters, they just completely eliminate that particular frequency from there. So if there is a frequency range or a frequency spectrum, the moment you cut it or you use the notch filter or the knob like that, it just takes it off completely. It takes off that particular frequency band. It completely takes it off. All right. Now, finally, band pass filters will filter out everything above and below a certain frequency. It will filter out everything above and below a certain frequency, basically eliminating most of the frequencies throughout the entire spectrum that aren't located directly around the frequency you've selected. Now, this is what I mean. If I could get the camera here, that would be. But this is what, in the nutshell, what I mean is that with the band filters, for instance, I have used, if for instance I've used what we call a band filter like a parametric EQ or a vertical EQ, all right? What I can do is that if I'm filtering out, I can filter out a particular band of frequency, for instance, just as I'm doing, a particular band of frequency, without necessarily cutting out everything entirely, but it can even work around. So on your screen, what do you have here? Let me use what's on the screen for you to see what I'm talking about. All right. So you can follow the knob. All right, the green. You can follow that green with my cursor. All right. So around that region, anything around there, I may not cut that particular frequency per se. All right? But what I will do here is that I will only just work around that particular filter. Hello? Are you there with me? All right. I'll only just a band pass. What it means that I will not single out one specific frequency and take it out. Rather, anything around that, whether I'm boosting it or I'm cutting it, it will cut around a certain range of frequencies, a certain number of frequencies, range of frequencies around them, okay, without necessarily cutting out only single instrument or only a single band pass. So that is what actually band pass filters do. So, for instance, on the screen, do we have it there, Dennis? All right. So what we are trying to say is that with the band pass filters, it will only filter out everything above and below certain frequency. Everything above and below certain frequency. All right? Basically, it will eliminate most of the frequencies throughout the entire spectrum. Okay? It will eliminate most of the frequencies, not a particular frequency, but most frequencies that are within that range or specific range of frequencies in there. All right. Now, the amount of filtering is dependent on the slope you choose, which is very, very true here. The amount of filtering is dependent on the slope you choose. The amount of frequency sorry, excuse me. Okay, so I take it again. The amount of filtering is dependent on the slope you choose. Okay? So if, for instance, I choose a 6 dB octave slope, it is more gentler and more gradual. All right? So, for instance, if I choose, if for what we just saw on our screen, if the slope or the amount of frequency that I have cut out of it is around 6 dB, you will see that it is more gentle than cutting a whole 24 dB of that particular slope. What I mean is that any amount of filtering that you do, it depends on the size or how large you take it up or take it down. So a 6 dB slope is much gentler than that of a 24 dB slope. Okay, now a 24 dB per octave slope is really aggressive, and it eliminates almost everything above or below that frequency cutoff immediately. Yes, I've already explained that. So that is filtering. Anything you filter, anything you want to filter, you just kind of choose the band. Either you choose a band or a notch knob, or you choose what kind of instrument, what kind of quality you want. Now, let me also move on to the second method, which is cutting. Cutting. This is commonly referred to as subtractive EQ. Subtractive EQ. So that tells you once we have subtractive EQ, we have additive EQ. All right? Once you have subtractive, and that one we will discuss it later, that is the third method actually. That is boosting. So now cutting, when you cut a frequency, you reduce its power in the frequency spectrum. All right? When you cut a frequency, expect that its power is totally reduced. Okay? So in that particular range of frequency, you will see that that particular frequency is actually going down a bit. Hello? All right. So after this, we'll go on a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we continue. So let me go on this one. So sometimes you need to cut an annoying ringing sounds and resonances in a specific track. Sometimes you also need to cut certain frequencies to make room for other instruments in a mix. So cutting is good, but when you are cutting, you need to know where you are cutting and how you are cutting and what you are cutting. That's why I said sound basics is all about why you do what you do. If you cut too much, it may generate or give you certain things that you may not like. All right? And if you also undercut, it may also ring out certain things certain sounds in your mix or in your ear that you may not know. All right, so on this note, let's take a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, people. So before the break, we just talked about cutting, and I was saying that cutting is more like doing a subtractive EQing. Doing subtractive EQing, it means you are taking out certain things, certain frequencies that are not actually needful for you, all right? So, and the reason why we do cutting, there are two reasons. The first is that sounds that are ringing and creating resonances, you just have to take them, all right? And then the second point is that we also do cutting just to create space. We also do cutting just to create space for other instruments or to give room for other instruments so that they don't compete with each other in a mix. All right. Now, let me take the third method. The third method is what we call boosting. Boosting. When you boost frequencies, you are adding more of them to the mix. You boost to add something that's missing, like presence, okay? Like presence. If we are talking about boosting, it means what actually you are trying to do is that a particular instrument which do not, or a particular frequency which do not stand out well, you are able to boost it and then bring it up. All right? And then when we are all right, and then with a boosting, for instance, there is a presence of if you want presence in the vocal mix, there are certain frequencies that you need to boost so that there can be that much attack. Is that right? All right. And then, if there is a guitar that you want its attack, every frequency that you boost or you cut or you filter, with every instrument or every frequency that you boost, you cut or you filter, note that one, you need to select that particular frequency. You need to select that particular frequency. That particular frequency, whether you want to boost or you want to cut or you want to just filter, you need to select that particular frequency. Two, be mindful of the gain of that particular frequency, because it is what you will use to either cut or you will it's what you will use to either cut or you boost. All right? Every particular frequency has got its own gain. And the third thing you need to also consider is the quality factor or the bandwidth. It is the bandwidth or the quality factor that you will use, okay, that you will use to either spread its, either filter it within a band or narrow it to that particular frequency alone. All right? Please, I am taking it again. I'm taking it again. I said, before you filter or boost or cut, get to know the kind of frequency you are going to cut. The kind of frequency that is making that noise. The kind of frequency that you don't need. The kind of frequency that you need. The kind of frequency that will give you that attack. The kind of frequency that will give you that presence. The kind of frequency that will give you that muddiness. So that if you are cutting, you cut well. Hello? Is that right? Okay. And then, if once you know that particular frequency and its style, you also look at its gain. Let me crave your indulgence that we will be going live with the band very soon, pretty soon. The band will also join us to play through one or two tracks based on what the mix we did last week or the EQ'ing we did last week without any compression, and all manner of colors. All right. So get ready for that. So if you hear any kind of sound behind or at the background, it is the instrumentalist checking up their various instruments up in there here. All right, so let me continue with what I was saying. Okay, so you just also need to know the gain, and then because it is that gain which we will use to either increase the instrument or decrease that particular frequency. All right, now the third factor or the third thing that you need to also look for is the quality factor. It is the quality factor. This is where you decide the width of the EQ. Whether you are EQing, whether it is being narrowed or it is being broadened. Okay? If you are boosting it, it means you are broadening it. If you are narrowing it, it means you are decreasing its quality. All right? So very soon you also get to know much about that. Okay. So at this juncture, as I told you earlier on, we are going to use all the strategies of today, and then we will use that one to get to know which instrument is being mixed and which instrument is not being mixed using the EQing factor. All right? All right, so we go on a quick commercial break. When we return, we do that. The drummer will play everything together, and then the keyboardist will play everything. The saxophonist will be there, bassist will be there, and then we all play together for you to hear what EQing is, the magic of EQing, even without compression and that of, what do you call it, effect. So we take a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. So we are just moving. We are just going live in the next 1 minute. So Sammy, can I have you on the drums? Can I have you on the drums so that we demonstrate to the viewers what we did last week? Okay, so on your screen now is Sammy, the drummer. He's the official drummer for Agape Incorporated and official drummer for Celestine Donko in Kumasi and the northern sector. All right. And then Sammy happens to be an IT instructor, a programmer as well. Sammy happens to be a programmer as well. All right. Sammy, can you hear me? All right. So last week, this is what we did. All right. This is what we did. So on your kick, can I have your kick? Let me just do that so that viewers can listen. All right. So I said last week that I'll cut this kick. I'm only using kick in. Sorry. So I'll cut my low up to about 50 or 49 heads. Come to the here. All right. So as you see me, what you see me do now on your screen is that I'm EQing the kick drum. So around the, I need some boominess and depth. So I'll go through 62.5 heads, and then I'll use my, this is the Q I was talking about. The Q I was talking about. And this is my gain. So if I'm gaining it, it means I'm taking it up, I'm increasing it, and I'm increasing the width as well. All right. So I'll come to my low mid. I don't want too much of midiness in my thing, so I'll narrow down my low and high mid as well. Even though with the high mid, I can work with this, where around 2 kilobytes, and in order to still dim down my mid, I'll just take it down like this. And then I need an attack, so I'll increase it at around 4K. All right. So in as much as I'm having the bite, I'm also having my boomness. All right. All right. Okay. All right. All right. So that is my kick. I won't add any effect or compression now. So as you can see on your screen, the compression is not active. The compressor is not active. Right. But the EQ is active. There is no gate in there because I just wanted to ring out most of the things that may make my sound muddy, which is my high mid around the 1K column. And then the 200 heads, around 200 heads, I also dipped it and Q it down. I broadened my Q of the narrow. Right. Okay. So that is my kick. Now, Sammy, let me feel my floor tom. I usually go through this act from my mix. I start from low through to the highs. So this is it. All right. So no compressor. I make sure there is no compressor. And then the low ends, I'll leave it there. All right. So the fact that it's low doesn't mean I don't need a bite. I need a bite. And I also need to do away with much muddiness. All right. Hello. I said, as I do that. Okay. So with my floor tom, I don't want much of boo, boo. So it also depends on how the drummer might have tuned it. All right. Okay. So that's it. All right. Then, Sammy, please, can I have the snare? Okay, so this is what I did last week for the snare. Snare top, snare bottom. This is only the snare top as you see it. I need it to be snappy. Yeah. Right, as well as some depth in there. So around my 200 hertz. I need some fat snare there. Give me some rim shot. So I'll work on my rim shot around the 1K. So I'll be careful I don't increase it so much. So I've narrowed the quality, all right, so that I don't get so much of heaviness in there, but I need the snap. So now this is the snare bottom, as I indicated earlier on the other time last week. All right, so both together, this is it. And I repeat, this is devoid of compression and effect. This is devoid of compression and effect. Okay, so let's go on. Sammy, let's have the hi-hat. All right. With the hi-hat, I only cut my lows. I don't need too much of the lows so that, but I will increase my so I have it there, and then I will. All right, so that is my high mid. I don't want it to be too harsh, so I'll dip that one too a bit. This is what I was talking about the shelving or filtering. So on your screen, you see me changing. This is, yes, somebody may ask, what about low pass or the high cut? If I do this, I am cutting my high. So as you can hear, the sound is becoming too flat because I've cut my high. I need a high end for this because this is actually a high end instrument. That is the hi-hat. All right. Okay, I don't need it to be too heavy. I don't need it to be too heavy. All right, so now that is my hi-hat. Sammy, can I have my first tom? In your ears, the first tom may sound at the left because I have panned it to the left. All right, so let's work on the first tom. That is my high tom that I'm tuning. Okay, so that's my high tom. Sammy, can we have the mid tom? Can we have the mid tom? All right. As you can hear this, this sound is unwanted, so I'll take it down on the screen like that. Just take it down. So much unwanted. I need more of an attack for a mid-tone. And a bit of high attack. Forgive me because the auditorium is big. So I have to hear the echoing sound. Right. Right. Okay. Can we have the low tom? All right. That's the low tom. Can we have the low tom? As you hear the dazzling boo 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 boo. Right. And then I'll work on my attack, starting from the high. I don't want too much muddiness, so I'll narrow these ones down. And it doesn't have to be as deep and depthy as that of the floor tom. So I'll dip it a bit. All right. Now, Sammy, let's work on the overheads. Please, before Sammy plays the overheads, let me make this one clear to you that overheads is not just supposed to pick only the cymbals, but it rather gives the stereo image of the entire sound. It gives the stereo image of the entire sound. So overheads, when you hear someone playing overheads, no, I'm gonna high cymbals and no. Please, you have to make sure that you have a very good stereo image of the entire overheads, all right, of the entire drums, not just for the hi-hats or the cymbals alone, but it's supposed to give the entire image. All right, so Sammy, let me hear you on the overhead. So try playing everything. Try playing everything. Yes, so it is the hi-hat, the snare, and the listening goes half high and so. All right, so when they are all mixed together, this is how it sounds. This is how it sounds in your ears out there. Sammy, can you play everything together again? All right, so thank you. Thank you. All right. So now my keyboardist is seated. Last week I think we did a keyboard. We did that of the. We didn't do trumpets and sax, but once I taught how to tune it, I'll just tune it quickly. Then we play through one song with the entire band, and then we just go through for you to know that how EQing is done with respect to all that we've discussed today about subtractive EQing, addictive EQing, and filtering. Okay, so once again I repeat, this is absolutely devoid of what do you call it? Effects and compressions. Sax, can I hear you play? Okay. He's using an alto sax, and that is what I just tuned over here. A bit of attack, and he has a wide room of. Okay. So, in a bit, you will see me over there with them, trying to go through with them what I'm supposed to do. Hello, yeah. In a bit, we are moving on. Let's play through and find out which instruments are actually competing with each other. All right? Which instruments are actually competing with each other? Okay, so we will just go through drums, bass, and the keyboard. All right, so we have tuned the bass guitar.
Hello, two, try two.
We have tuned the bass guitar. We have tuned the keyboard. We have tuned the drums. All right, and so we are supposed to go through together for you to see whether each and every instrument stands out. All right, so we're just going through one song for you to give me your comments in there. What is wrong and what is right? Definitely some things will be wrong and other things will be right.
Think that God, His Son, no sparing, sent Him to die. I scarce can take it in. That on the cross, my burden He gladly bare them, and He died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to Thee. how great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Yeah. How great. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, how great thou art, how great thou art.
All right, viewers. So this was just a short demonstration of what we did, and I'm still waiting for your comments and your questions. What actually went wrong and what actually went right. All right. So on Facebook, we see you all. We see you all. God bless you. And today, we are likely to end here, but next week, God willing, we will come your way once again with a different topic. And next week, I promise you have a different guest all the way from the capital city of Ghana, Accra, and I know he will be a blessing and a wonderful person to you as we move on. And next 2 weeks, as we are hitting the subsequent weeks, there will be other people who are going to be here and who are going to help us teach and learn all together. All right? All right. So until same time next week, see you and God bless you. Bye-bye. By way
Yadamuniko,